These two guys are pretty good. I don't know if they have a prayer, but they're pretty good. Now, I say that only because they're running against a very powerful incumbent. Good evening, Dan York here. This program is, we're not going to run a rundown this evening because I want to take some quality time with two quality guys who are running for Congress in the 1st District. They are Republicans, and of course, they will be running against David Cicilline, who is pictured here, if we have him. Yes, and of course, all due respect to Matt Fecto, who has served the country well in Iraq and other places, who's having a hard time debating inside his own party, looking to get some time with David Cicilline, and has been unable to get that done. The very cocky incumbent has really handled that whole situation pretty poorly, I think. But these two guys here, one of them will face off against David Cicilline in the general election. Cormick Lynch is here, Tran is here. You've met them both via this program and the radio. You know, I like and admire both of them, so we're going to have a hearty conversation about the issues. Gentlemen, welcome. Nice to have you.
Dan, thanks a lot for having us here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stan kind of blew me away before we came in here with some theory about green rooms, and so he's obviously feeling very.
So
you're feeling very what about?
We're in the green room right now,
right.
And like when you look on TV,
don't tell anybody that.
You
this
can
is
tell
the
that
magic of television.
the edges around your hair, you can kind of tell there's like
Guess
a little
what?
weird fuzzy thing.
We just touched it up a little bit, and it's been the engineering staff is going to sue you now because we have actually improved that. But I know what you're saying. What was your theory?
So I heard that in certain shampoo commercials, to get really the nice hair flip that the models have, they have a fan. They also have some guy dressed in all green to match the green room,
right,
and flip the hair up and then take a picture so it looks like really nice and fluffy and flying.
Do you have anything insignificant you'd like to bring to the conversation before we start?
Not right now, Dan. I'm ready to tackle the issues, I think.
Look, you guys are serious about your campaigns, though. You've kind of outlined some of your principles in previous conversations. Remind everybody, though, who are seeing you for the first time, you know, why you're in this. Give me the 30-second, half a bio, but why you really want to be the congressman.
Of course. I think, in short, the bread and butter of my candidacy is the service members are disrespected and overlooked in Washington. And I think that's indicative of our foreign policy. I think that's indicative of the 40 veterans who died waiting for for health care this past spring. And we need a change, Dan. It's that simple.
Now, you've served the country. I mean, you have experience. You've done that. Your track record is pretty significant. Tell everybody real quick.
Right. I have one combat tour to Fallujah. I joined the Marine Corps at 19. By age 20, I was on orders to Fallujah. And by 21, I was a machine gunner in the terrorist capital of the world. And I think we owe our service members more than the current state of Iraq. It's proved to be an existential threat. We took the politically convenient route when Obama took office, and I think his exit from Iraq was as irresponsible and short-sighted as the Bush administration's entrance to it.
All right, you all right? Need some water? Grab it if you do. We have some? I hope so. I hope you have some of that. That happens to me every once in a while, and we just go to commercial. All right, Mr. Greenroom. No, seriously. You're a Brown student, medical student. You're just
right.
You are but this far away from being a doctor.
That's right.
And then you called home, told Mom and Dad, guess what? I'm going to run for office. And Mom cried. Dad went, oh my God, what is going on? Do I have that right? Which one cried?
Yeah. So my mom was really upset. She yelled at me. She passed the phone out to my
yelled
dad.
at you. Right.
He did the same thing, and he passed it back to my mom. And so they tag teamed me on the phone for like an hour and a half.
But you have a serious mission here. You're really about healthcare, and that's really
right.
been your direction.
Healthcare and education. So I was a high school teacher before coming to medical school. And the reason I'm running is because I see the effects of government policy on education, on healthcare. And I think government policies are failing our students and failing our patients. And I can tell you firsthand why that is and how to fix it.
All right. So, well, why don't we pick that one as a start and talk about healthcare, and I'm sure Cormick is not unfamiliar with the issue and has some thoughts on it. Your premise is what?
Healthcare costs too much, and Obamacare hasn't made it more affordable.
And your reaction to that, and or your original thought is?
I think our healthcare industry before the Affordable Care Act was passed was in many ways indefensible. The solution to those problems is not a federal hijacking of the healthcare system, which is what we got. In addition to that, we can't forget the dishonest pretenses it was passed under. lines from the president such as "you can keep your health care if you like it," or "you can keep your doctor if you like it," turned out not to be true. That's unacceptable.
Your suggestion is, based on our multiple conversations, I recall, is that you want people to be more consumer aware and do some price shopping and have the information that lets them do that, right?
More free market, more competition will drive down the prices. I think the healthcare industry today is controlled by a few special interests, and they've written into law certain protections they have for themselves, and that keeps prices high. And if we can overturn that protection in Congress, we can drop prices dramatically.
Thought on that?
I agree. I think there needs to be health insurance reform. I think healthcare is too expensive, and we need to let the free market take care of things. I think we need to allow insurance companies to compete across party lines, and we need to allow small businesses to pool their insurance together so we can drive down the costs.
You guys, do you have a debate on healthcare and all the travels and the sharing of thoughts that
it
you've
comes
had?
up.
Do you disagree on any aspect of what ought to be done now?
No, I mean, it comes up. We've exchanged ideas. We're both solution-oriented candidates, and we want to do what's best for the people.
Yeah, later in the program, I'm going to talk about what it's like to have two guys who are seeking an office who really have not been at each other's throats at all, are kind of running their own races in this race, and how kind of refreshing it is for guys like me who watch all this to say, oh, gosh, I don't have to put a helmet on for this particular conversation. So, Stan's Obamacare-ish review is primary in his thing. Your discussion of the military and how we treat is primary. So go ahead, elaborate a little bit on what your more powerful platform plank is.
Well, I think we have the largest, most well-funded military the world's ever known, right? We spend more on national security than the next 20-something countries in the world combined. We have the most honorable, noble men and women who undertake our strategy and who wear our nation's uniform. So you got to ask yourself the question, how come it's taken us 13 years and counting to win the war in Afghanistan? How come ISIS now has $2 billion in assets, is spanning 2 countries, and has control of oil fields? It's our civilian leadership, and we got to hold them accountable.
You're not happy with what David Cicilline has had to say about this?
No, of course not. No. We had an exchange the other day, I think it was last week at Laurel Mead, about Afghanistan.
And?
I think he wants to take the political path of least resistance. He wants to remove all the troops and leave now. And I think it's the height of arrogance to think that when you leave a war, you win it. I didn't commit to it. I said we need to reevaluate a few things over there. The strategy's been flawed. I think that's the worst kept secret in Washington at this point.
Thought on this?
I think foreign policy is a combination of diplomacy and military strength. We're not doing so well with the diplomacy part of it. Our ambassadors are appointed based on not merit, but based on who fundraises the most money for the president. And the going price is about $1 million. If you fundraise $1 million for the presidential campaign, you can get an ambassador's seat in Norway or some small country. And it's embarrassing to us as Americans that we send ambassadors who are unqualified for their jobs. Obama recently, a few months ago, nominated somebody to be the ambassador of Norway, and he thought that Norway had a president. It turns out Norway has a king. And it's just, that sort of thing hurts our image abroad, and it hurts our diplomatic efforts. So like in Iraq, for example, the solution to that is that our vision of Iraq has to match their vision. In the past, we've wanted a single pluralistic democratic Iraq where all the different factions work together, and they don't want that. And so until our vision match, we don't have any future of working together.
Well, we also have had a leader that was installed that literally beat the Sunnis or actually did not create a Sunni Shia compromised government,
Right.
which really fractionalized the whole work that you were doing as you were gunning over there. That work more or less went in a toilet bowl, didn't it?
I mean, you're right. We can't have unilateral military aggression on behalf of the United States to solve the problems in the Middle East, right? That's not how we're going to accomplish our goals over there. Furthermore, I think we've set the bar too high in Iraq by saying we want one nation state and a democracy. I mean, we've been at our democracy for how long now, and we still have troubles, right? The notion that there's going to be one nation state and one democracy is a very, very high bar to set. I would be satisfied with them not killing Christians, with ISIS not being an existential threat, with them not harboring terrorist groups that...
But right now, with ISIS rubbing up like they are, and with the James Foley situation and the response to that, we got to go get them, right?
We do, but yes, absolutely. But it didn't have to get to this point, right? We have to go get them now because the media is covering it and because there's a political will to. However,
well, regardless of that, you don't think there's a pragmatic need to in terms of our nation's
I think there was
security?
a pragmatic need to years ago.
Get it, but
right,
right.
But yeah, I mean,
spilled milk,
right? Better late than never.
And
Yeah.
your last thought on that?
I think we need to get them with Congress's approval. I think the president does not have the power to unilaterally declare war, and in the past he's tried to do it without congressional approval.
That's an argument that can go on and on and on, because guess what? There are no traditional wars anymore, right?
Right.
All right, when we come back, more of the issues from these guys. Good, huh? Stay with us. Welcome back in. One of these two gentlemen will face off against David Cicilline in the 1st congressional district race come November 4th, I think is election day. But of course, September 9th, you'll decide if you're a Republican or an independent voting in the Republican primary, and you live in the 1st district, which one of these two fine young men are going to be your choice. Cormick Lynch, Stan Tran. You know, the economy is certainly something that pollably is on everybody's top of mind. You have a plan?
Yes. So Rhode Island used to be the center of manufacturing, and today we have the highest unemployment rate. Now the center of manufacturing is in Germany. Some of the best products, BMW, Mercedes, Audis, they're made in Germany. That's because in Germany, most high school students go through vocational training and go through an apprenticeship. In the United States, federal programs like Race to the Top have squeezed out vocational training. We want all our kids to go to college, which is great if they graduate, but that's not the case in this state. Most kids who go to college drop out in the first year and don't come back. So they're burdened with debt, they can't find a job, and they have no other backup plan. So we're failing our students through this idea of trying to get all the kids to go to college. And we're doing a disservice to the kids who aren't interested in going to college.
So what do you want to do real quick? What do you want to do?
Bring shop classes back to high school. So metal shop, wood shop, not just that, but like computer programming, CAD drafting,
How do you do that
graphic
from
design.
a congressional role? I mean, that's the kind of thing that a state rep or a state office holder could say, we're going to entrepreneurialize in Rhode Island. How does a congressman get that going?
So if you look at federal legislation, the Race to the Top, I went through and read the Rhode Island's application for that grant. One of the way they measure themselves was to look at how many % of students go to college. When you grade yourself on that measure, you're going to try to get as many students as you can to go to college. And it's not working out because you should be looking at the number of students who graduate from college, not going to
So the
college.
high stakes testing you don't like because
In high school I don't like, that's right.
because it is all oriented to that goal.
Yes, and that's part of...
So as we're getting kids to teach to the test, you're saying we're creating plans to the grant.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, if I understand.
And
You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think we need to make Rhode Island more competitive. I think Forbes and CNBC ranked Rhode Island as the least competitive state to do business. I think there's quantitative things we can do, such as lower the corporate tax rate, get companies here, but I think we have a reputation to restore. And I think before we really see private sector investment, we need to prove to the private sector that we're open for trustworthy
All right. So
business.
as congressperson or congressman, how do you improve that culture reputational thing? And is that your purview?
I think you have to hold people accountable when they screw up. I think there needs to be an ethics commission. I think right now our whole federal delegation should be on the phone with CVS, who's thinking of leaving. And we need to, I mean, we do so much forecasting in the future because our politicians, for good reason, don't want to look in the past. We come up with plans to try to get companies here. We forget about the ones who have been rooted here, which are leaving. So I also think we need to provide tax incentives to small businesses and companies like CVS.
Well, here's the thing, though, about the federal office of congressman vis-a-vis the economy. The best it seems that we get from our delegation is, some pork. It's a pork battle to get money for projects. I mean, Jack Reeves just celebrating, $10 million over 3 years for Appanog yesterday.
Right.
That seems to be the federal approach to economy stimulation here. the things you're talking about seemingly have to be built from a state foundation. So how do you juxtapose those two concepts?
I think our federal delegation should work with their local and state counterparts. So I think there is this notion now.
And you don't see it happening?
No, I think it's a detached federal delegation that goes down to Washington and pulls a lever.
What do you think about that?
So yes, I think with education, we have to work with the local, state, and Board of Education to fix that. The problem is that no one is willing to have leadership to speak out against what's not working. And right now, getting all the kids to go to college, it's not working. And people are afraid to speak out against that because if you do, you can be branded as, oh, you only want the rich white kids to go to college and have the poor kids to go to vocational training. And I think it's important to realize that we've gotten a lot more kids to go to college in the last 10 or 20 years, but it has benefited mostly the middle class. Those who are very poor have continued to not being able to go to college, and we haven't seen a rise in the number of college graduates in that population.
All right. So you to see from this conversation, this is hardly a debate. It's just two lines of thinking, two kinds of approaches, two different conversations that are going on for one office. When we come back, I want to talk to these two guys about what it's like to run against each other inside a Republican primary, but they really have no fight. But one of them's got to win. Stay with us. All right, so as you listen to Cormick Lynch and Stan Tran, who are congressional candidates for the opportunity to get your primary vote on September 9th, which now, I mean, you're watching this on Friday, it's Tuesday. You're nights away. If you're a Republican or independent voter coming into your Republican primary, know that you got to make a choice between one of these two fine young gentlemen, a med student and just about to be an internist or family practitioner, as long as he gets past mom and dad who are still livid at him for running for Congress, or Cormick, who's had military experience, was a gunner in Fallujah, was a firefighter in East Providence, a self-made in a lot of ways and went to school on your own, did a lot of good things. You should look at their bios. Here's what's interesting about this race. I mean, for those in a political environment who are kind of craving a little bit of a battle, have you guys had one in this race at all? I'm sure you've met in multiple places at multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, there's been
Is there something you disagree about?
Yeah, there's been disagreements. I have a different position on assault weapons bans than Stan, so to say, but I think we need to be mindful of who the real opponent is, right? And I think the timing politically, we have the second to last primary in the country. If you spend all your resources beating up your primary opponent, you have 55 days until the general election after that. So it's strategically too. It's just not. It's not sound.
Thought on that?
I mean, I think having a one-party system is terrible for this state. In this year alone, we saw the head of the Democratic Party step down. We saw the Speaker of the House step down because of investigation into their ethics. And so there is no other voice in government, in the state government, in the federal legislation from this state to speak out against this sort of thing. When the Attorney General isn't investigating the Speaker of the House, I mean, who is? You have to wait for that battle to come in.
All right. So the viewer who's concerned that David Cicilline should be beaten in November has to choose between you two. And one of those decisions will be one of the criteria for those decisions will not only be what you think about the issues, but who's got the goods to actually build a campaign. You have practically no money, correct,
Right.
in your campaign.
Right.
And you really don't have the infrastructure to build it in 55 days, correct?
Right.
So what do you say to the person who says, I like this kid, but how in God's name is he going to win?
So it's important to realize in this district, Republicans or Democrats outnumber Republicans 5-1. And so in order to have a chance of winning this, we need someone who understands the liberal ideology. And thanks to being at Brown and being at liberal institutions my entire life, I understand that pretty well.
So what, you're a liberal spy? Is that what you're saying? Stan Tran, the liberal spy?
I was a kid that didn't quite fit in, like in college and medical school. I mean, all my friends were liberal. Just they were my friends, but I mean, we disagree on a lot of these things, and I understand how they think, and I understand.
I mean, you don't have any money to tell anybody other than being on the show in a couple other places,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
I mean, I go out there and try my best.
Your funding is at what level now?
I mean, I'm well positioned to win the primary. It's causing a lot of headwind. A lot of people are saying call September 10th when you're the nominee. We'll be happy to support you, right? I do think that what's going to bring this state back to success isn't a concession to liberalism. It's a restoration to conservatism, right? And I think there are a lot of people with a D after their name in Rhode Island who are conservative. And there was an article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that outlined just that. I've worked in a union before. I went to college on the GI Bill. I think I can affiliate across a a broad spectrum of people, and I think I can get them on my side.
Between the two of you, who's tougher? Who's the better competitor?
Tougher on what?
Tougher in this campaign, tougher on David Cicilline. Who's going to bring it?
I think the solution here isn't to be tough on him, but to show that you have better solutions, right? People don't like a candidate who's angry. That doesn't appeal to people. People want a positive vision. People want to see that if they vote for you, their lives would be better. And so I can show them that through conservative principles, like more competition, driving the prices down, giving students more choices in education, that sort of thing will improve the economy, bring down the cost of healthcare. I think that's going to make people's lives better.
I think you do need to prove yourself to the voters, and no one wants someone who's just banging the table, being loud. But if you want to be Cicilline, you're going to have to hammer it home. You're going to have to get across the podium. You're going to have to hold them to it. You're going to have to say, Congressman, that's not true. Congressman, I'm not for a war on women. Congressman, you're wrong about that too. Let me tell you why. And I'm prepared to do that this November.
All right. So there are your two choices. 10 seconds on why you ought to be the choice.
I was a high school teacher before coming to medical school. Now, as a medical student, I see firsthand the effects of federal law. In the race to the top, No Child Left Behind, Obamacare, and I think we need someone in Congress who understands the effects of the laws, as opposed to just another lawyer.
I think I've seen firsthand the sacrifices that go into protecting our country, preserving our way of life, and Washington isn't doing right by them. I'm ready to fight the fight.
Tuesday, Cormick Lynch or Stan Tran, 1st District Republican to face Cicilline. Be right back. Yeah, I got to tell you, I like those two young men a lot. You got a good choice in the Republican primary come Tuesday. And by the way, on Monday, we'll pay a lot of attention to how the primaries work, so you can kind of follow that. You got something to say? Your state of mind? We'll bring up some of what you have to think about these guys and more tomorrow night, or Monday night, rather. This is Friday, right? 228-1886, you can call us. All right, I got to go. But again, it's a lot of open primary rules that you got to follow. We'll cover that on Monday night. You have a great weekend. Thanks for watching My State of Mind.